Welcome to the Child Care Business Professionals Podcast. I'm Evelyn Knight. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining me again today. So today is part 2 from my interview with Tiffany Olivas from the Department of Education in Nevada. And today it was a wonderful interview. I'm really excited for you to hear about. We discuss mental health for early childhood professionals. We touch a lot on teachers in the classroom, but mostly on people in managerial positions like owners and directors. So you're definitely going to want to listen to this entire interview. Next week, I do also have an interview with Christine Mailer, who is my business advisor, and she has some amazing suggestions for directors and owners on how to make your center profitable while you maintain quality. I will not make you wait any longer. Here is the interview. Let's shift gears a little bit and talk about mental health for providers and directors. I know before we started recording, that's something that we were talking about, which is something we really just don't see or talk about enough. What are you seeing, and what are your opinions on that?
Well, I think, so what I'm saying is exhaustion.
Yes.
And a feeling of being completely overwhelmed. And I have to say, I have been a teacher. I've been a director. I've done almost everything in early childhood. And when I say is the hardest job, I mean that.
Yes,
what I do
I
now
agree.
is cake.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, working with adults is really easy.
Right.
The balance that you have to have with children, being a good example. I mean, it's almost like you have to, I mean, it's nearly impossible to turn off your emotions.
Right.
And, today is a chaotic day.
Right.
But I can't look like I'm stressed out because I have to continue being a professional. Yeah. And that's really not normal. You're not going to find that in like any other profession.
Right.
You know, I mean, right now, if I have a bad day, I can vent to my supervisor and it's accepted, it's received, and it's wonderful. Early childhood folks don't always have that out.
Right.
You know, they can't leave the room. They can't take a break. They can't go get coffee. You know, they don't have those opportunities. Yes. And so, it is very, very overwhelming. It's a tough job. I mean, when I say there needs to be mental health supportive services for early childhood, like I mean that more than anything.
Right.
And there's a complete lack of it, which amazes me. I mean, you talk to a parent who has one child and
yes,
they're like, this is the hardest job I've ever had to do.
With one.
And then with two, oh my gosh, it's 3. And you know that, and you're just
you just get totally over. Yes.
Oh yeah. Imagine
right.
that you have 12.
Right.
By yourself. And you don't have the out of being like, right. Oh my gosh, my kids are driving me nuts. I'm going to turn the TV on
and you can't
and
say
walk
that.
away.
Right. As a parent, you can say like, my kids are just driving me nuts today.
Oh, yeah. No.
And you can, I know for me, with my children were young, I could call my mom or my mother-in-law and like, hey, I just need a break.
Or give them your phone and just say,
exactly.
Play a game.
You could put a movie on.
Something.
You could just do, right. But as a provider, first of all, you're almost shamed if you admit it, right? People are almost shame you for saying it out loud. And you don't get that break. And I know, especially for in-home providers, there's times where they can't even go to the bathroom by themselves.
Yeah.
So, I did in-home first, and I would say it's harder than, like my center here has 130 children. It was probably harder doing an in-home than it is running a center of 130 children.
Yeah.
Because you just...
Agreed. I did family child care also, and it was just like... And it's also like a 10-hour day.
Yes. Well, and parents take advantage. Yep. They know you're at home. So like, hey, I'm just going to run to the grocery store. And there's that, I don't know, there's definitely a safety behind the business. But I totally agree with you. It just, one of the things here, and I don't know if it's because I have been a teacher, I've pretty much held every position in a center, but mental health is really important to us. So we always stay overstaffed by 2 or 3 people. That way, if our staff does need to step out, they know they can call somebody. They know that there's, and I acknowledge that with them on a regular basis, that like, hey, I know your job is hard. So if you get to that point where you feel totally overwhelmed, let us know. If you need a mental health day, be honest and tell me, I need a mental health day, because that is a huge priority for us. But
as
and you're rare.
I know. Yeah.
That is just not even an option
Right.
in many early childhood programs to be able to, say like, I need a mental health day. But no, I mean, we're talking about a profession, like, unless you are so sick, you cannot drive your butt to school or to the school that day, you need to come in.
Right.
Because we have ratios to keep, and we don't overstaff like maybe you do, because they don't have the money to overstaff.
Right.
And so that's just that's just not a reality.
Right.
And I think a lot of times when people are calling and saying, I am so sick, I cannot drive to school or to the work today, then I bet half the time it's probably mental health day.
Right.
Or they're making themselves sick because they're so overwhelmed
Well, I
with
think
work.
that's a big one, is that we make ourselves sick because, and I also see on the opposite end of that, the teachers who feel such a sense of responsibility that they really just get it. They understand how important their job is. So they get to the point where they will not call in when they should be, or they won't admit they need the mental health. And I think sometimes they won't admit it to themselves that they need the mental health day because they're so committed to the children. And they also don't want to let us down. Like I know for Brandy and I think we also feel like sometimes the staff might feel like they're letting her and I down.
Right.
So they won't call in when they really should, or they won't ask for help. And I don't know, I think sometimes that's just women, we feel like if we're asking for help,
then
it's showing weakness or we're failure, right? Yes. So something I've really tried to train on too now is like, I would rather you come to me and tell me, hey, I'm really struggling with this. I'm not going to look at you in any other way. Like I'm not going to look down at you or think you're less of a teacher because you need help. Actually, I think that's a huge strength. But I do think that's rare. I know when I was a teacher in a classroom, I did not get that kind of support at all. And instead it was the opposite, where I remember my third day in a classroom, I was left alone with 6 infants, and I was a new mom too. And I had never been, I had been a nanny, but I was very young, and there was like 4 crying babies, and I was just trying to get to all of them. And one of the children had dropped their sippy cup on the floor, and the director came in and just started yelling at me for that sippy cup being on the floor. And I just, I can be sassy, so I did tell her, like, instead of criticizing me, you could help, you could do something. And it was but it was like my third day working there, and I was just kind of like, are you kidding me? I'm sitting here trying, I've got 6 crying babies, I'm by myself, and you're gonna nitpick me over a cup on the floor. So I think that's where I've gotten a lot of my philosophies and why I try to promote a more healthy mental environment. But as much as we even try to promote that, I still see the struggle. Yeah. I still, and
because it is just a hard job.
It is. Right. And it's such a committed job. And since we're caring for children, I think that teachers feel like if I do take some time off, I'm letting my kids down. So they just get so committed. And then they also don't want to let their coworkers down.
Yeah, because if you don't come to work, it's
someone's picking up the slack.
Exactly. Yeah. It's very hard, I think, for people. I mean, I just think in general, it's hard to talk about like just mental health altogether, right? It's a tough discussion. Nobody really wants to talk about that stuff now. It's finally, I think I'm seeing like a turn, like it's more acceptable to have those conversations, but not in early childhood.
Right.
So, you've got one kid and he is really making you angry.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, really, truly angry.
Pushing your buttons, yeah.
Oh, because he knows.
Right.
He knows the buttons to push. Is that acceptable to say to someone?
Right.
No. I mean,
you're shamed for it.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then
you feel shame for it.
Horrible shame. And you have to, have a conversation with the parent at pickup. And how do you it's very difficult. I mean, it takes a lot of skill
or anger
to pull that emotion out of it. Like, he made me angry, and that's not okay.
Yeah.
You can't say that to a parent. You have to phrase it like, he had some challenges today, and maybe, and so how much skill? I mean, that takes a lot of skill.
It does,
to be able to have an appropriate conversation with a parent of a child who has made you feel so angry,
Right.
So we expect so much from those teachers. Yeah. And so they're not even given this skill. No one's taught.
Right. A lot of them are straight out of high school or in high school. Yes.
Yeah. And not even a ton of life experience behind them.
Yes.
And we have these incredible expectations for early childhood. And I think that it is just very overwhelming.
Right.
and you throw in the fact that, generally they're making very low wages,
minimum wage, yep,
maybe no benefits at all,
right?
So their home life is kind of a wreck at times,
right?
I mean, maybe they're even struggling to pay their bills or
yeah,
keep food on the table for their own children, but yet they have to keep it all together,
right,
at work.
They have to be strong. And,
it's just
so overwhelming.
It just breaks my heart. I mean, because they're doing such important work. We have so many expectations,
right?
And yet we don't have simple supports in action in place
totally agree.
For
yes.
them. And
yep.
and we wonder why there's so much turnover.
I so agree. And I think that's something I've been studying a lot about lately, because the biggest complaint I see from other directors is turnover.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, when I'm reading through like just different Facebook groups of directors and I'm reading these comments and posts, they're not supporting their staff.
Right.
They are complaining about the things they complain about. First of all, I'm just kind of like, well, put yourself in their shoes. And I know like most of directors have been, but it's like we get that disconnect where the staff doesn't quite understand what the director's going through, but at the same time, the director isn't seeing things from their staff's perspective either.
Right.
And in those terms too, the directors have a ton of stress now.
Yes.
And I know for me, one of the things that I struggled with early on, which I can help coach my staff through now, is that staff get so focused on just their classroom that they don't understand that a director is trying to juggle the entire building. So they get so focused on what their own classroom needs and wants that they don't see that the reason the director cannot accommodate you is because they have, these other classrooms that's not going to work for.
Right.
So I think where directors make a mistake in that area is they don't communicate that. If they just said, hey, I understand you need this, but I also have to think about this, this, and this. And if I give you your lunch at this time, then they have to, I think it's just if you explain to them that domino effect, if you help them to understand that you're running the center as a whole, it will take that stress off of the director, in that the staff will get it a lot more. It's just that
right. I mean, communication has a lot of power.
It does. Yeah.
It is, and as you're speaking, I keep thinking about, where do you learn those skills?
Yes,
and directors are usually put into that position because they were
teachers,
the units.
Yes,
they have like the college credits, and then they're able to transition into being a director. Still, no additional skill or training on communicating with your staff or running a business or communicating with parents. And yes, I mean, this and our industry is rare in that we have people in management and even ownership where we don't have any business. We have no business background. We don't know how to run a business, but essentially that is what a director is doing. They're running a business. Definitely.
When they're usually just teachers who fit state criteria to become a director. And they do have a passion for it, but usually they've got that teacher mindset and they don't really understand how to be a business person.
Exactly. They have the heart.
Yes.
They have the passion, but running a business is something completely different. It has
hard. Yeah.
It's very hard.
And it's really hard keeping up with parents and, the juggling everything. And we do an annual staff meeting here. And I really believe in being transparent with my staff, because if they can understand where I'm coming from, they'll understand, why am I telling them no to certain things? Why am I not doing certain things? Why do they make what they make? And in that annual staff meeting, I actually go over the entire, this is where our center sits right now. This is my budget for the year. This is how much money we took in last year.
Very transparent.
Very transparent. We show them these are the parents. I don't actually show them names, just this is the percentage of parents that left because they didn't pay their bill. And what I'm trying to help them understand is, where you're seeing your classroom, I'm basically juggling 19 employees and 180 families. And so I have to make all of those balls stay in the air, not just your classroom. But it really, really is, it was the game changer, I think, for my company when I made that shift. And I think that's where my employee retention and everything started to change, when I really empowered my employees too to understand what my job entails. It really helped them to just, I guess, be more cooperative. So it took that stress away from my portion of it, at least. But still the parents. So now we joke all the time, the toughest part of the job is the parents.
Sure. Yeah, I know. It is hard. Recently I guess it was about a year ago now, I had a program director who was very upset. And I think a lot of it was QRIS keeps telling me I have to do this, but I can't feasibly do this.
Yeah.
And I have to manage, my families and the subsidy paperwork and the requirements for that. Yes. And then I have licensing and the fire marshal and all of these other people telling them what to do.
Yeah.
And sometimes they conflict.
They do oppose. Yes.
And that's going to do nobody good, right? But this woman really had, and I said, okay, well, I'm going to come and talk to you. And it was a QRIS program. And so her coach came and we sat there, and this woman literally had an emotional breakdown in front of us.
Oh,
and it was, I mean, I get goosebumps even thinking about it because it was just so sad.
Right.
And honestly, there was nothing I can say to make her feel better.
Right.
Because
the
job is really hard.
Right.
And managing everything that they have to do.
Yep.
And the responsibility of all the families that rely on them to work.
Right.
And all the teachers that rely on them for pay.
Right.
And I mean, she had a major breakdown, and it just struck this chord in me, and I just felt like, wow, we're really missing something. We're off the mark here.
Right. I totally agree.
We have got to support our providers and our directors more, because this is not normal. This is not healthy.
Yep.
And you have a director that's having an emotional breakdown.
Right. And usually the owners are out of touch.
Yes. And how are they supposed to support their teachers?
Right.
And give them, the opportunity to communicate like you do with your staff.
Right.
If they are so, wrapped up in this pain of all this stress and responsibility.
And feeling like you're going to let everybody down.
And then you have teachers who aren't sure they're even going to get paid.
Right.
And so what kind of teacher is that?
Right. Yep. Oh, I've been there. That's why
I mean, it's horrible. And so
Yep, I've been there. I mean, I think that pretty much summarizes my first 5 years as an owner director. But and that's part of the reason I'm doing this, and I'm starting the business I'm starting is Childcare Business Professionals, because I know that pain, and I've been there. My children have seen me to the point where I've just been on the floor crying because all these people were relying on me for their paychecks, and I knew I had these families relying on me to go to work when all I really wanted to do was quit and
never come back.
I did. And I just, thank God I didn't quit now. And I actually was introduced to this lady who's a business consultant, and I basically told myself, okay, this is it. I'm going to hire her. If she can't save me and my business, I'm done. I'm going to quit. I'm shutting my doors. And it was the best decision I ever made. And I realized I couldn't have done it without hiring her. So I literally worked with her side by side. I still work with her. She's now, I call her my accountability partner. But she, once a week for an hour a week, every Thursday, we work together on just how to be how to manage and how to be an owner and a director. And she taught me, first of all, that they're two different jobs, and just how to get control back. And so she basically just really helped me not to just have that teacher mindset, which I see so many directors and owners getting stuck in, and really saved the business. Not only did she turn my business around, but now I'm a thriving business. And I can tell you, when I hired her, my husband was putting about $50,000 a year into Zooin to keep my doors open. And he was literally funding it. He used to call this my very expensive hobby, to the point now where for the first time last year, I turned over $100,000 profit. So he's, and I have to,
Are you paying him back?
That's, Oh yeah. He created a bill for me. He actually did. But I actually have to know what the IRS considers a profit isn't what normal people like us consider a profit. But according to the IRS, I made that much. But it's kind of interesting, though, to me, just the stress release that I have now, the clarity I have now, and where I can see the mistakes I was making. And when I was in that place, I wish I had hired her years before, but that's part of what my goal is through all this, is trying to help other owners and directors that were in that position and feel that absolute desperation, I'm hoping that I can help them know that they don't have to be there. It doesn't have to be that way. It's just we have to learn how to be business people, which kind of, so exactly what that lady you're telling me is going through, that she's the exact type of person I'm hoping to help through all this.
Well, and I hope that we can support you to do that, because it's really kind of a unique approach that you're taking. And, we, for QRIS, we really focus on like, your environment and the materials, and we do, policy and procedure stuff as well. But, there's not a bunch of even quality indicators within QRIS that have to do with running a business.
The business, right.
And what we do is, like one-time training you get credit for attending or something like that. It's not very like meaty, Right. And I think that what we need to do, I mean, we can't really have one without the other.
Right. Yes.
Because if you're failing in business, then you're failing.
You're failing, right? Well, and even if you're not an owner director, if you're an owner that's failing and you're relying on a director to run your business and you're failing, it's really hard on the director who doesn't know if she's going to be able to pay her staff, if she's going to...
I've been that director in the middle and not knowing the whole story. Right. And it's a bad feeling. It's bad, and it doesn't help you become the leader that your teachers need you to be. Yeah. If you're always, worried or kind of just a middleman.
Well, that's another thing my business advisors really helped me with, is learning the difference between being an owner and a director, but also that those two have to work together. And so I feel really bad for directors out there whose owners just leave them alone, because it is such a hard job as it is, and it should be two separate jobs. But in the United States, there's no criteria to own a childcare center, which is why I think there's so many centers in crisis.
Yes.
I know I was listening to an interview with an owner in Ireland, and they actually have to have criteria to own centers. They have to have degree, they have to know the industry basically. So my business advisor has been helping me put programs together to help teach owners and directors how to be business people, basically, how they should be working together, or if you do both, how to separate those roles and what it should look like. So hopefully we can help more people out there not to feel that. I feel that poor woman's desperation. I've been there. I've literally had my children walk in on me while I was like on the floor crying because I just didn't know what I was going to do. So I feel her pain. So I think we will end it at that. And thank you so much for coming in. I think that was a great conversation. Do you have anything else you'd like to add before?
No, I'm just thankful that you invited me to be part of this. It's very exciting. I just think that the more we talk about like these real life issues, like we're not just talking about children.
Yes.
That's our end goal, right? But the more that we talk about how we can support our teachers and our directors and our small business owners, I think that is something that we're just kind of missing the boat on. And so I'm so glad that you invited me, and this was really fun. And I'd be happy to do it again. And if anybody wants to contact me, they can just look me up on the...
And I will put your contact information in the show notes. So if anybody wants to contact Tiffany, you can go to the show notes, or you can go to my website at childcarebusinessprofessionals.com, and I will put Tiffany's contact information in there. Okay, well, thank you, Tiffany.
You're welcome. Thank you.
I really hope you guys enjoyed that interview. I have to say that this interview is really near and dear to my heart. I have done a couple more interviews that you guys will be hearing, but I think this one really resonated with me because of that story Tiffany told about the owner who pretty much had the breakdown in front of her. And you guys, I have been that owner. I have been there. I've broken down in front of my staff. I just have felt that absolute desperation of just not knowing how I was going to pay my payroll, how I was going to pay my taxes, and knowing that my amazing staff deserves so much better than what I could give them. So if you're a director that just knows that your center is facing that and you just feel totally overwhelmed, or if you're that owner who is just terrified because you don't know how you're going to pay the bills, please reach out to me. That's really what my goal in all of this is if I can just help one person and save one center from shutting down, I will have achieved my goal. Also, I am going to be launching a program in January that will be tackling a lot of these issues. It's going to be about center management. So, whether you're a director or an owner, this program is for you. I will be teaching on the lessons that my business advisor taught me that completely turned my business around. Like you heard me telling Tiffany, my center was at the point where my husband was injecting about $50,000 a year. And you guys, I kid you not, I was, there were years that my center was making like a negative $80,000 to $90,000 a year. And now I am turning a profit and I'm doing so much better. Plus, like in the last episode, I also have a 5-star quality center. So this is really something I want to help you out with. So check out my website, childcarebusinessprofessionals.com. And you can also find more information on my Facebook page, which is the Child Care Business Coach or Child Care Business Professionals. The Child Care Business Coach is my page that you can like. And I also have a group page, which is Child Care Business Professionals. You can also find me on Instagram under the Child Care Business Coach. And I will have my schedule of the classes that are coming up. And within the next week or so, I will be taking signups for those classes. So you can send me a message on Facebook or DM me on Instagram if you'd like more information. Have a wonderful week. Thank you for joining me. Please subscribe to this podcast on iTunes and let me know what you thought of this episode in the comments. You can also tell me what subjects you would like me to address for future episodes. And one last thing, I would really appreciate a 5-star review. Don't forget to check out all the great resources on my website, www.childcarebusinessprofessionals.com.